4 ways the financial world is lying to you. Who can you trust?
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Yeah, Brian, I think this show is going to be sort of interesting because we live in a world now where we're inundated with information. I mean, we have whatever you want to know in any realm of the universe at your fingertips in real time, but I don't know that that's always a good thing.
Well, I think the typical person doesn't realize the biggest deterrent, the biggest obstacle to their success is actually what resides right between their ears.
Yep.
Your brain is going to be, you're going to want to react, you're going to want to have all these influences cause you to do something. And our biggest goal is, I think one of the biggest the biggest benefits to watching the Money Guy show, since we have hearts of educators, is that we help you to know what's coming your way. So hopefully it turns into wisdom.
That's right.
That you can actually weather this stuff. So we have today's show is kind of the 4 different influences that I think are kind of seeping in all around you
constantly.
And, and how you can kind of stand up to that and know what actually you should listen to, what you should avoid, and what's actually, actionable, something that you should actually implement with your personal finances.
Love it, love it, love it.
So do you want to go ahead and jump into the first one and pick on them?
Very first one, and this is one that's not going to be incredibly surprising because this one gets a ton of play all the time.
We ring this bell all the time, and the fact that I've even on Twitter, it's Yahoo Finance, it's CNBC. They'll talk about something devastating going on in the market and say they'll so cavalierly talk about the market's getting crushed,
right?
And it'll be down less than 0.25%. They'll do that stuff constantly, and it drives me crazy because the financial media, it is so hard to trust anything they say because they've gotten to the point where it's all about the clicks. It's all about keeping your eyeballs, your ears. They want to keep you engaged so they can sell more advertising, make more money. It's not necessarily to make you better at what you're doing with your personal finances.
Yeah, it's even less about conveying useful, tangible information. It really is about keeping people engaged, dialed in for as long as possible.
Now, there is a timeless thing. Anybody who's taken journalism as a degree or a class, FT Daniel, you come from a background of being a journalist as well as a financial planner. Do they teach this? They don't teach this, do they?
No.
No, it just happens when you get out in the
But
industry.
it's under there. It's there. It's there. It's implied because here's what it is. If it bleeds, it leads. Understanding fear-based media. And I thought it was so interesting when I was doing show prep. I actually found an article from Psychology Today, and it had an interesting quote. And I thought this, even though this was written in 2011, it's pretty timeless. Listen to this, because this totally plays into today, 2020, and this crazy year that we're living through. Here's the quote. Much of today's television news looks to the spectacular, the stirring, and the controversial as news stories. It's no longer a race to break the story first or get the facts right. Instead, it's to acquire good ratings in order to get advertisers so that profits soar.
It's all about making money. It's all about what's the ultimate profit motive, not sharing good, sound information anymore.
So, and the whole adage, if it bleeds, it leads, really has 2 purposes. If you think about Sweeps Week on your local news media, I think there's even services that sell these headlines now, is that they don't even have to get creative and come up with this stuff anymore. Tell me if this example is not something that's happened. I know I've seen this at least probably 10 times in the last 20 years that I'm thinking about it.
In every town that I've lived in, I think.
Because here's the headline. What's in your tap water that you need to know about?
Well, now I've got to read it because if
poison,
it's in my
right?
tap water,
it's going to be in poison.
and I need to know about it.
So that's what they, in the industry, they call it, the financial media and the media in general calls that the teaser. The whole purpose of that is to grab your attention, keep you focused. But they also, here's the other part. The other purpose is to persuade you that if you will just tune in, that they will provide the answer and you'll have the comfort of knowing that since you tuned in, you're in a better place. That's the second aim. That's not really what happens. I don't think anybody, because I know I always have a letdown feeling. If you get caught into this teaser feeling, at the end you'll go, wow,
that was nothing.
They didn't actually give the answer to that. There's nothing, by the way, it's not that, okay, they put fluoride in the water. I mean, it's just not as big as what they build it up to. And look, it's not even the financial media. This has been so successful at keeping your eyeballs, keeping you scared into focusing, that the advertisers that even advertise on like talk about your AM radio stations with talk radio, if you think about your cable news stations, they've gotten into realizing, hey, if it works for the media, it should work for us advertisers too. Let's use fear to sell. And that's why you come up with stuff like seed banks. I think it's so crazy, these crisis seed banks. Now, I haven't seen these as much as I did in 2008 and 2009.
When we first started doing this together, I felt like they were all over the place. Like you could get your 5-gallon bucket of seeds to go plant your crisis garden, and you could have that forever. I don't feel like that's happening as much anymore, but it'll come back. These things always come back. We will see them again. I don't know that if you're really scared about things going kind of wonky, a seed bank is the thing you probably ought to go run out and grab.
I mean, you can see a survival seed bank. You can plant acres. Just give them a little bit of money, and that leads to the other part that I think is the other crisis currency is gold.
Oh,
Now
absolutely.
look, and you put this in the show notes, Bo. You said you're not actually gold's not horrible always.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that gold is something that doesn't ever have a purpose inside of someone's investment portfolio or inside of the allocation. There's a very real reason why someone might want to hold gold. But I think that what's really interesting is the time that gold often gets pitched the hardest and you hear the most about it probably isn't the time that you want to be running out and adding gold to your portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. I want to give, because this is something I think never gets covered, but it's the limitations of gold. Let's talk about this. By the way, this was one of our first videos we did back in 2011.
2011.
Guys, we might at some point have to do a reaction video to some of our old videos from 2011 because we kind of came at YouTube hard in 2017 and we've stuck with it.
Yep.
But we tried this in 2011. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So we might have to have a reaction video on that. But here's the thing about gold. It's not going to innovate. So it doesn't matter. You can put gold on your desk. You can put it in some room in your house. And you can leave it there for 5 years, come back, it's just going to be a little dustier. It's not going to innovate. It's not like it's going to create a new processing chip. It's not like it's going to come up with a better business model. There's no innovation coming out of gold. It has no income component. Same piece of gold that's sitting in your closet, or hopefully you got it someplace even safer than your closet. You have to, it has no income component. And the fact that it's not going to have interest, it's not going to pay you rent, there's no dividends. It just kind of sits there and shines. That's really its only purpose. So that's a struggle in the fact that it's not actually doing anything for you. It's not reproducing or growing. It's just sitting there.
Not only that, it's actually a suck of resources because it costs money to store it. If you have a lot of gold and you want to keep it secure, you got to pay to do that. So it's not only is it not going to create income or generate income from you, it's actually going to pull income away from you realistically.
Yeah, you have to it costs you money to keep it safe. And then it just sits there. It shines, it doesn't even smile at you, but you can at least go in there and polish it up and look at it and go, oh, my sweet gold, my precious, because that's really all it's doing for you. And the only way you can make more money on gold is if you can convince somebody to pay more than you paid for it. That's really the only way you make money with gold. And always, the thing is, when people tell me that they're thinking about gold, I'm like, so does that mean you think that the whole system's about to implode upon itself? If it is, you're going to need a lot more than gold. Gold is not the most valuable thing if you think Armageddon is coming. Sure. So it's so interesting that is typically when gold is pitched higher is when there's uncertainty out there. But we wanted to go a step further. I mean, we have all these resources. We have FTE Daniel. We're like, let's ring the bell and actually look and see what gold has done.
Yeah, and so what we did is we said, let's look at the price of gold and let's just kind of lay that right next to the S&P 500, which is something that innovates and does create income and does have yield. So in 1980, you could buy an ounce of gold for $594.90. Or you could have invested $594.90 in the S&P 500. Well, if you fast forward 40 years, today that ounce of gold is worth $1,959.30. So it went from $594 to almost $2,000.
So that seems, that's pretty good. It went, well, in the fact that it looks like it almost quadrupled. It, a little less than quadrupled.
Sure.
That works out to over 40 years though. This is if you think about the typical person, this is what your working life would be. If you were starting saving and you're 20 and you grew it, it's 2.98% per year.
I mean,
that doesn't sound as good.
In like recent memory, like money just sitting in your like savings account could earn more than that, right? Like that's just not a ton of return.
I don't know if my cash was earning 2.98% right now. I'd be pretty excited.
I said in
right now it's pretty
memory,
close to zero.
In recent memory.
But that is over 40 years. that seems like less than perfect. So what has the S&P 500 done during that period?
If you took that same $594 in the S&P 500, it would actually be worth $52,267. It's multiplied by a factor of 88 times over that 40-year period.
I thought that was, by the way, that's very poetic. And Daniel's the one that brought that to our attention, and the fact that, now realize the annualized performance on that is 11.84. Because remember, the thing is that when we run 88 times over, we talk about for a 20-year-old, if they will invest $1 when they're 20 years of age, put it in something like the S&P 500, by the time they're 65, so that's 45 years in the future, we assumed a 10% rate of return. It'll be worth $88. I think it's quite interesting that after only 40 years, looking at it from 1980 to 2020 or into 2019, that it actually is 88 times over. So maybe we're even a little more conservative when we look at it. But that's pretty powerful when you look at the difference of those two numbers.
What I think is interesting is we can think about all the major world events that happened in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And if gold is supposed to be this thing that's supposed to like keep you safe and keep you protected, I would argue that a basket of goods like the S&P 500 did a much better job of being a safe asset for you than that hunk of gold did.
Now, I do want to protect you guys because a lot of you are going to notice in the financial media when the advertiser is pitching gold to you, they're going to show you the 2000s. They're going to put the gold. They're going to put gold, the price of gold, compared to the S&P 500 or the stock market in the 2000s. Because look, we know that was the lost decade. The recession of 2008 was so bad that it's considered the lost decade. That's why they always started in like 2000 versus 1980. We wanted to show you a more full picture so you could see what history actually shows when you show as much time as possible.
Yep.
So let's talk about the next thing. Guys, I had to fight for this one. Just to let you know, pre-show, I mean, I felt like a prize fighter. I was having to go to work on this. Just for you guys, I was working overtime to make sure this show matched what it needed to be. Because here's the next thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about the fact is, can you trust the media predictions? And there's a reason that I wanted to set the table on this is if you're thinking about the media, is there even any value to the predictions? Because you think about CNBC, Fox Business. There are talking heads available 24 hours a day you can hear about what's going on in the world. Well,
and to tell you which way the world is going to go, right?
And they want you, I mean, I think the way they position this is actionable information for you. By the way, don't get in a hurry and stand still because it's just not, this is not actionable content. And what does the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, say about all these people making these forecasts? He says this: the only value of stock forecasters is to make fortune tellers look good. He was very nice, by the way. He didn't put weather people in there.
That's right.
Because he could have gone fortune teller versus weather person, probably a toss up on the coin toss. And then the second thing he said was forecasts may tell you a great deal about the forecaster. They tell you nothing about the future. So be very careful. And we wanted to kind of give you case study examples of is there any value to the media's predictions? You know the answer. The answer is absolutely no, and we have proof.
And what I think is so interesting is this isn't even a recent phenomenon. This isn't something like, oh, well, in this new day and age that we're in, this is a new thing we're seeing. It's really not. If we look back to August of 1979, this is a Business Week cover titled "The Death of Equities." I think you were around back then. That was a pretty popular magazine.
You're not saying that'd be funny. It is kind of funny when I look at that because I'm like, I was around back then. I'm like, oh yeah, Bo wasn't even born yet. I mean, 79 was a good year. It was the year after my little brother was born.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so this is what they said: the death of equity. So surely you're thinking, in 1979, I want to just stay away from the stock market. No way am I going to be buying stocks. No way am I going to be investing. Well, now we know the rest of the story, and over the next 12 years, the S&P 500 annualized almost 17% per year over the next 12 years. 80s was a good decade.
So I'm going to do this just for my own benefit and edification. Is there any value to the media's predictions? In 1979, no. If you'd have done something with this, you'd have been disgusted with yourself. Okay, let's see. So they obviously can't tell you when markets are going to recover. How about buying when things, should you listen to them when things are good?
When things are good. Okay, so let's look at March of 2000. This is Money Magazine. This is how to invest in the hottest market ever. So they're going to tell you this market's hot. Here's what you need to do. You got to get you some of this. Don't miss out. Well, the S&P 500 over the next 2.5 years lost 14.65% per year over the next 2 years. No, next 2.5 years.
Well, yeah, they were right at the top of the bubble of the dot-com bubble, so
Yep.
it was just a horrible prediction. So, well, this was old school. Things have gotten better. We've modernized.
That's right.
If you think about this, Bo, because you just showed me an example from 1979, you just showed me an example from 2000. That was all before the internet and everything revolutionized. If you think about now we have all these smartphones,
Sure.
information's traveling better. I bet things have improved.
Oh, yeah, they've gotten much better. In October of 2008, this was the new hard times. And I think that's a soup line.
Yeah,
Now-
they grabbed a Great Depression picture
Now,
back on Time magazine.
You and I were hanging out in 2008. I don't remember a ton of like soup lines then, so I don't.
It literally says free soup.
It says free soup back there. So they said, the new hard times, so it's not going to get any better. Well, we know that over the next 11 years, the S&P 500 annualized 14.68% over the next 11 years.
But I talk about this all the time, is that you need to look at investing is that you are throwing the yo-yo. I'm talking literally that childhood yo-yo, that Duncan yo-yo that you had as a kid with the butterflies on the outside. Look at investing is that you're throwing it up and down, but you're walking up a higher mountain. If you look at the visual we have of what the last 11 full years have been, that has been a yo-yo ride. That's not even that. It's like your string on your yo-yo was very short because it just a very smooth walk up that mountain. So it's just kind of just be careful who you let into your brain because it's not the financial media that's working for your wallet. If anything, they're working for your eyes and your ears. You could care less about where you're going to put your kids in college, how you're going to retire, how you're going to build financial independence. Always keep that in focus so you don't make bad mistakes.
All right, so we said that the financial media can't be trusted, but surely that means that financial professionals, folks that are out there that are
you mean
supposed to
folks
be
like us?
folks like us,
Yeah.
surely those types of folks can be trusted, right? Surely folks that are professionals in the financial world can be trusted, right?
Well, I mean, why would we go soil our own brethren? I mean, this seems like this is either mean. It sounds a little self-serving, but I do think it is educational. Sometimes it's okay to be self-serving if it's a win-win
Sure.
scenario. So
Absolutely.
if we can help our audience, why not tell everybody how our industry works? Because, Bo, you worked for an insurance company through college. I worked as a registered rep for a number of years. Is that sometimes we get things a little out of whack. Instead
Absolutely.
of becoming experts and getting that 10,000 hours of working for 5 years in the industry, how to be a great financial advisor, a lot of times our industry is more about the whole sales side
That's
of things.
exactly right.
So we see that, and so here's the first piece of guidance. Is your financial advisor lying to you?
And that's kind of a scary thought, right? Because obviously, whenever someone signs on with a financial advisor, their first thought is, oh, this guy looks like a crook. I think I'm going to sign up with him, right? But a lot of times that's what happens out there in the financial world. But it doesn't have to happen. There are ways that you can protect yourself.
Well, I even think sometimes, because lying, that you guys grab that word. I cringe a little bit when we were doing the pre-show and I saw the word. I'm always like, I give people a benefit of doubt. I'm assuming maybe they're not lying. Maybe just don't know any better.
Sure,
I mean, because
okay.
there's a lot
Fair
of,
enough.
I think, well-intentioned financial advisors that just don't have the chops of knowledge, experience to know that they just don't know what they don't know. So but here's some things you can do to protect yourself. The first thing, guys, do your research.
Yep.
I mean, this is so easy. I mean, I think about when I first entered my career in financial planning. You couldn't Google people as easily as you can now. You can go type in anybody's name, and we do this on job applicants. We do it with prospects. We do it. I mean, you can Google about anybody. So go do your research. Go see what you can find online about the financial advisor you're thinking about working with. And then here's the part. There's government regulating bodies that you can also go see if there's some data points out there. The SEC actually has an entire website called Check Your Investment Professional. And it's easy enough. It's sec.gov/check-your-investment-professional. The dashes screw it all up, but you see what I'm saying. Check your investment professional with dashes in between.
Yep.
And that's the SEC. That's your registered investment advisors and things like that. And then if your person is a commission-based advisor, kind of with a broker-dealer, They're going to be on Broker Check by FINRA, and that one's just brokercheck.finra.org.
And we actually have a real world example where we were hiring someone who had been in the industry for a while, and one of the things that we did is we went and checked these resources to see if they had any sort of disciplinary actions or anything like that, and it enlightened us to some information that we were not privy to in the interview process. So we, even as professionals, can use these resources.
Yeah, so make sure, and look, you're probably, anybody who's thinking about hiring a financial advisor, you need resources. You need something to let you know, how do I do this? Because you can educate yourself through the process. You don't have to just work with whoever shows up or who your aunt tells you is great or the friend at the cocktail party. You can be involved in the process and actually do your own due diligence. But we wanted to speed up the process.
Yep.
We wanted to help you. So if you go to moneyguide.com/resources, we actually have, and I'm going to hold it up because I'm nerdy, 8 questions to ask your financial advisor.
Yep.
You can go download this for free. Just go to moneyguide.com/resources. 8 questions to ask your financial advisor. It's going to kind of give you some discussion starters to really help you speed the process up.
Absolutely. And it's a great thing. Even if you already have a relationship with an advisor, these questions are great questions that even your current advisor should be able to answer very, very easily, very, very straightforward.
Now, probably thinking back, I would have probably put the example first before we gave them all the education, because we've actually closing this section with the example of why these 3 resources are so important. Is I think that everything I just shared, those 3 websites, between Googling people, going to FINRA, going to SEC, there are filings. Matter of fact, if you work with a registered investment advisor, they're required by law to give you disclosures.
Yep.
I know that broker-dealers are also required to give you forms, like with an RA, it's ADV Part 2.
Yep.
You have to give your brochure out to everybody, and it's going to have all kind of disclosures. And guys, I can tell you from doing this for over 20 plus years now, there are clues when you're working with a crook.
Absolutely.
And the perfect example is Uncle Bernie Madoff. Now, Bo, I had to fight for this slide too.
You fought hard for a lot
because
of our
I
slides
realized, and thank you, Reby, for kind of making this possible, is because I said, look, we are now getting over 10 years from when Bernie Madoff had the largest Ponzi scheme in American history.
Yep.
And I think that I always worry as you get older and you have time, there's constantly people. That means that there is 10 to 12 years where there's a whole new breed of investors that have come out of graduated college, out there in the workforce. They might not know who Bernie Madoff is. And I want you to be protected from that, because I did shows. Realize I've been creating content since 2006. I actually did a show where I went line item by line item, all the horrible things that were in Bernie Madoff's SEC filings before he got found out. I mean, you would know more in The Man in the Moon work with this guy if you just read what's actually put out there on the internet about
I think
this.
the thing that was so remarkable to me is hearing about all the people that did get swindled by by Bernie Madoff, and all the very intelligent folks who, if they would have just done a little bit of research, if they would have just read the document, they just would have gone a step further, they would have protected themselves from losing millions and millions of dollars.
Because there's crooks out there right now. I don't know when it will happen, but it will. It seems like every few years there will be some new crook that is unmasked, and the financial media will explode, and we'll go, oh my gosh, how did so many people get ripped off? And then I'm just going to nod my head and be like, I guarantee we can go pull their filings, and we're going to see that they disclosed that they were crooks right there in front of everybody. And I want to give you an example, like Bernie Madoff. Think about this. They checked only one box on how they get compensated, and it was commissions, meaning they get no fiduciary obligation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're crooks, but it does give you at least an insight into the fact that they don't have to put your interest ahead of their ability to sell products to you. And then here's the big one. This is the one that I even bold-faced in the show notes, because there's a question, because here's what was checked yes. And guys, when you go look at the SEC website and you see something like this, your spidey senses ought to be kicking up, because here's the quote question that they checked yes to. Has any self-regulatory organization or commodities exchange ever found you or any advisory affiliate to have involved in a violation of its rules? That's a pretty big deal. If you're saying,
I broke the rules.
So every brochure that he's handing out, he's kind of letting people know, hey, yeah, I kind of cut some corners in the past. You should be very aware of that. Go do your research before you work with somebody, and I think that will save you a lot of heartache. It will also hopefully ward off you getting into a bad situation.
And look, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to work with a financial professional, if it sounds too good to be true, Sometimes it maybe is. If you have someone who's guaranteeing you exponential rate of return with no risk, and they figured out this secret to wealth building that nobody else knows, but if you sign up with them, they'll let you in on it, maybe that's not the direction you need to go. Maybe that's not the right kind of advisor for you.
Bo, I feel like today's show, we're kind of picking on ourselves a little bit because you see what number 3 is.
Oh, yeah.
Influencers. Now, we're baby influencers. we're not mega influencers yet. We're working on it. We're growing the tribe.
18,000 away from being mega.
We're almost at 100,000. We'll get the plaque. We'll put it somewhere on set so you guys can see how proud we are. So remember, we're trying to get to 100,000 by year end. Please go subscribe so we can speed this process up. But we're going to pick on influencers here a little bit because I think that this is so important because you guys know. I will tell you, I love this, but I also hate it about YouTube. YouTube's algorithm, I mean, if this thing was your child, you'd be so proud of it because it is just smart. I mean, this thing, if you think about whenever you go log into YouTube, or you don't really log, go to YouTube.
Okay.
You notice the homepage has tons of recommendations.
Sure.
A lot of the stuff is you probably looked at some content from this person, but they'll also, throw up some stuff that you've never seen before, a content creator. You're like, wow, that thing is smart. Well, in addition to that, besides the algorithm throwing content that it thinks you might like, you'll also notice everybody usually who's a content creator will have YouTube ads.
Sure.
And you can skip them in 5 seconds typically. And it's just part of the experience. There's going to be advertising on the web page, on the YouTube channel.
It's just part of the game.
It's just part of it. Well, I've noticed on ours, I'm going to set the table here. I feel like I also need kind of some music or some crashing wave sounds because it's always this influencer who's trying to sell you their system and they're walking the beach or they're sitting in a fancy car or they got some beautiful person of the opposite sex that's sitting next to them and they're telling you if you will just buy their system, you too can have this.
Yep.
And I see this on our channel all the time. So I want to give you, before we start picking on some of this, I want to give you some tips, some
practical tips,
moments so you can insulate yourself from the sales tactics that are being used. The first thing I always do when I'm trying to figure out an influencer, it's kind of the chicken or egg approach. I want to know, was this influencer, were they successful pre-influencer status or has the success come because they are now an influencer? It's the whole chicken and egg approach. Where you got to have that part understood because I think a lot of these people are great entertainers, but I don't know if there's some benefit to buying the product. And that leads to the next thing. What is their why? Why does this person create content? Is it to sell you something? And I think that's a big part. Is there a system or a product? And if they do have a system or product, ask yourself, is this actionable? Is this measurable? Or is this just a feel-good moment? Are they just trying to make you feel aspirational, feel like if you just do what they've done, you will have everything they have, and you'll have the attractive person sitting next to you, the fancy car, walking on the beach in the middle of the day. So that's the stuff that's out there. So I wanted to put up, and Bo, you kind of have a setup story, is that you had some of this stuff start showing up on your feed.
I don't know what it was, but this one particular individual started showing up on all of my social media. So if I was on Facebook, his advertisements, his sponsored content would be there, and it'd be him talking about, here's how I bought my jet, or here's why I bought my jet. Or he'd be on my Instagram feed, and he was just all over my stuff. And I started thinking, who is this guy? And why is he showing up on all of my social media? Why does the algorithm want me to know about this guy? So we did a little bit of digging. We actually went and did some research on him.
So I think it's interesting. Go ahead and pull up the picture. This cracked me up because this is Grant Cardone. And there's so much going on in this picture, by the way. If you think about the 3 annoying things that are, it's 4 annoying. He's got 3 of the 4 annoying things that social media influencers do. It's first of all, he's got a clickbait title. Now I'll tell you what the titles that he uses is stuff like, why I bought my Gulfstream jet.
Yep.
Well, I kind of want to know why he had to have a Gulfstream jet. I mean, that is a very clickable title there. But he'll also have he'll have a look at this. He's got a G5 with his name on it.
His name on the back.
He's even got he got a little pump. He might have done some push-ups before he took that photo.
He's got
a little pump going on there. He's got the fancy watch. I mean, it's all the stuff that if you think about this, he's going to tell you how to do your system just like him. And the only thing he's missing of the four things, because he's got the clickbait title, he's got a flashy toy. If you watch his content, he will have some explicit stuff in there. He'll drop some some language on you. And then the last thing, this is the one thing I will tell you Grant does not have. I give him credit for it. There's not half-naked people
There's no
in his videos because that's the four. If you have, because there are a lot of content creators out there that are hitting all four of these annoying things that people do. It's kind of call them hacks to getting their audience. I don't love that. But here's the thing I think you need to think about with Grant is, can he be trusted? And is this something, how does he get paid? I always want to know, how does somebody who has a G5, obviously, is this success? But go back to my three questions that I was talking about. Where did his success come from? What's his why? And then try to figure out how is he doing everything that he's doing. And we kind of found some disturbing information out there.
It was eye-opening, and I was pretty impressed as we started digging in because again, it's one of those things. When you see this, you start thinking, how do people not catch it?
And now look, I'm not saying that Grant is Bernie Madoff, but I'm just saying that there are disclosures. Grant, to his credit, he's very transparent. If you will just go read his sales circulars that are out there on the SEC, he point blank tells you what he's doing. I think he's just assuming his prospective people are not reading. So
they're just not going to go look at it.
I give him credit. I mean, if you don't care, if you don't have the conscience to worry about, are you making the world a little bit better place? He's a marketing genius. And the fact that he is convincing people it's the whole other people's money, he's subsidizing his life off of other people's money. And here's the proof. I want to go a little deeper. Let's show what is available out there on the SEC's website.
Yeah, so if you actually go read this circular, it's fees upon fees upon fees. And this is what it says. When he goes into any sort of real estate deal, or if you invest money with him, he gets 1% of the purchase price of the property up front.
Okay.
Right? So
1%.
1%.
That's pretty, look, we work in an industry, it charges 1%.
Sure.
I get it, 1%. On the it's a little weird that it's on just the purchase, so he's getting you on the coming in. Okay.
Yep. All right. Well, then 1% of the sales price of the individual property. So I get 1% on the front, and then I'm going to get 1% on the back as well.
Okay, that's kind of a sales charge. I say, we've kind of, our industry's gone where it used to have, you either were A shares where you had the commission on the front, or you were B shares where you had the commission on the back.
Yep.
So it's kind of weird that he's getting both, but it's all right. And then what's the third one?
Then it's 1% of the total amount of contributed capital on all the members, annualized, paid out monthly. So it's 1% ongoing per year.
So look at this. I do think this is quite interesting. He has all three ways that the financial industry gets paid, but it's not like it's an either, because at least in our industry, it's an either or.
Right.
On you choose which A, B, or C scenario.
Yep.
Grant is just like, I'll take them all.
I'll take them all.
So he's going to take it on the front end, he's going to take a fee on the back end, and then he's going to take a fee every year. He's going to take 1% every year of the money that's been invested with him. But that's not where it stops.
But wait, there's more.
This is the part where I told Daniel, now he didn't do it, I don't think, because when we were doing pre-show, I kind of let this slip out because I felt bad that I already added a bunch of new slides. If I had my way, this next number, this is, if you want to know the genius of taking money out of a situation, this is the genius of what Grant did. And this is what I'd love to have been in the meeting when they were figuring out their offering. And they're like, well, Grant, hedge fund managers, they have the whole 2-2,
right?
The 220.
Yeah.
Because, they'll take 2% of annual fees, and then they'll do a 20% performance fee on anything. They'll just take 20% of the return. And Grant was probably like, 20%? 20%? No, guys. No. I think y'all are not understanding. My folks love me. I get these people so excited about what I'm doing that they're not going to read this sales circular. So just tell them what it is. His number, I wanted this number big. I wanted it blown up. I wanted it spinning around. I wanted fireworks because I think people ought to have to see how big this number is because it's not 220. And here's the other thing I think is brilliant, Bo. If you look at the sales circular, now on a different page, this is carried interest, which means it's taxed
right
at long-term capital gains. He's just like a hedge fund manager in the fact that when you hear politicians talk about taxes that they want to raise because they feel like it's being taken advantage of, Grant was like, I want to structure this thing where I get
just
to,
like
I want to
that,
pay the lowest taxes possible. Check out this number.
35% profit interest and 35% of distributable cash.
So, okay, this is worth repeating, guys. 1% on the front end, 1% on the back end, 1% ongoing. That's 3% right there. And then he's now going to take 35% of the profit that is created on these deals. Holy cow. We are baby influencers. You know, I'm not willing to put myself up there as, you know, some of these guys that have 1 million followers. But I do think our intent speaks for itself. I'm willing to put myself under the same microscope that I put these guys, the chicken and egg approach. That's the first question. We had our success and wealth. It's still not coming from YouTube. It's helping, but the business success was much more. So definitely the chicken came before the egg on ours of what the golden goose has been this, but it's also in the fact that we had successful business interests and working with successful people. Also, I'm very proud of the abundance cycle. I wake up every morning feeling like in my own small way by creating this content where for over 14 years, we've been giving away free advice. I mean, completely free advice. You come, you learn, apply, grow. And then my only ask is down the road when you reach level of success, because we've been in our second decade now, call us up so you can consider hiring us because the fruit is in the way we've trained you. And what I think is interesting, how would it be if we're giving you all this advice for 14 years and then when you hire us, we don't do index funds. We don't do all the things. No, it's not that way at all. We do everything we tell you on the free side. We also are doing for our paid clients as well. And look, and I think that a lot of people, because we got the comments. We have a new course out, you know, and go out there and get the free deliverable on the financial order of operations. You can go to moneyguy.com/resources. A lot of people were troubled that we actually have a premium version that was paying because they're like, you've always given stuff away for free. Why would you change? My thing is that if I'm going to do actionable where it had worksheets, it had downloads, it actually had a much deeper dive than we could do on a podcast or a YouTube show, it's okay because I still am leaving the free resource. I'm leaving the breadcrumbs out there for you to see if you can do this. And it's true. If you watch probably 2-3 years worth of our content, you'll get the same type of stuff. But if you want to accelerate the process, get the nudge, get the data gathering, that's what we were looking for. It was not to undercut the brand or do anything. But I think that intent, that desire is what's different. We didn't have to do the course. We did the course as an acceleration to try to get you through the abundance cycle. And it still ties back to, are we making the world a little bit better place with all this content?
Yep, and I think that's a contrast, right, of I'm going to call a negative influencer who's the guy that's trying to sell you on a system. And then obviously we try to be positive influencers, but there are other influencers out there that are net positives, that they do great stuff. 3 of the ones that we threw out just like off the cuff, Dave Ramsey, Graham Stephan, Clark Howard, they're all, and I think what's interesting about each one of them is there are tangible results from what each of the 3 of those have done. If you want to talk to someone about getting out of debt and really changing their life and changing their behavior, say what you want about Dave, he's second to none when it comes to actually getting people motivated to get out of a bad spot into a positive spot.
He's also not a bad guy in the fact that we work in Dave Ramsey country. I mean, we are in Franklin, Tennessee. His organization, I think, is quickly approaching 1,000 employees. So they're a big employer here in the community. I know people from my church. I know people from my neighborhood. You do too that work there. And you want to get somebody excited, talk about the shopping days he does at Green Hills, some of the charity events. I mean, he does do good work. Now, look, we don't agree with Dave on everything. I think you guys know we've even done some shows where we call into action about his investment philosophy compared to. But otherwise, I think you can, if you're looking to get out of debt, Dave Ramsey is the best motivator of getting you out of those behavioral things. I kind of consider us graduate level studies for the people who don't struggle with the behavioral things that Dave is talking about a lot of times. That leads to, and this one's a sentimental favorite of mine, is Clark Howard. He's on the far right. A lot of you guys might not know who Clark is because he's not as national. He's more of a regional player. He was on both WSB, which was talk radio in Atlanta when we lived in Atlanta. He was also on WSB, the TV station, Channel 2. And Clark is just a consumer guru.
Yep.
This guy was, by the way, if you want to look at influencer status of chicken or egg approach, he was a successful entrepreneur and business owner who was retired at a very young age. He already had built up enough money. So nerdy, so bored that he started calling into the radio station every day. To one day, I think he tells a story that I can't remember if somebody got sick, but Clark basically showed up and said, "Hey, let me try this out." I mean, he has a nerdy story that is so awesome, and I think his just will to be an educator and help people grow has always influenced me. I talk to people that he's also encouraged. I got to do a tour, and he kind of helped inspired this show back in 2005 and 2006. And the last one's kind of a newcomer on my radar, at least. I know he's been doing this for a few years now, but man, Graham. Now, he does a lot of those annoying things that I just think I'm getting old. Right. This is where I'm old and crotchety because he does like 3 of those 4 annoying things that influencers do. But he's legit in the way that his minimalism, the way he lives his life is kind of incredible.
And I think his transparency, you know, he's not super pretentious. He kind of puts it all out there for you. He kind of shows you exactly what he has going on. And he kind of tells you, hey, look, if you want to do something similar to what I've done, these are the steps. This is how you do that. And he puts it all out there. You know, he has a lot of content out there for free. He does have some courses and stuff. But I think that's great. And I think he's had a net positive impact on the financial world through his influence.
So it's not all negative. I mean, there are some positive influencers out there. And that's something I just want to make sure we are clear on is just pay attention, train yourself to know what questions to ask, to know what the intent is, what the why is, so that you can navigate that as effectively as possible and not fall prey to some emotional trap or some, you know, where they make you feel good to lure you into a trap that financially will not be in the best interest of your wallet.
Yep, love it.
Okay, let's close this out with the last one. This one's interesting. Are you financial sheep?
So we've talked about financial media and advisors and influencers, and now we're going to talk about society as a whole. Those voices out there that have an impact on us that we don't even realize have an impact.
By the way, society is if you think about everything we faced in 2020, if you think about the way people behave when we have market downturns, there's a reason when we talk to a retiree and we're talking about safe withdrawal rates and other things, we always say, look, this is a super conservative assumption because the reality is that when economies are in struggle zone, nobody keeps hitting the accelerator on their savings, even though we put that into our projections. We put that into our Monte Carlo analysis and stress tests. We know that the typical human is going to slam on the brakes as soon as we hit a downturn. And that's because you are influenced by those around you. You are influenced by society.
Yep. And I think the world around us wants to kind of lie to us about money or maybe misrepresent it a little bit or just get it wrong. You know, I think one of the things that I think is so funny, you know, growing up in church, I always used to hear folks say, well, you know that money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And I remember I heard that growing up and I was like, well, I know a bunch of like really nice, wealthy people. That can't be right. Well, they obviously had gotten the verse wrong. It doesn't say that money is the root of all evil. It says that love of money is the root of all evil.
Well, it's like most things. There's a little kernel of truth that the whole context is not put into perspective. So the actual verse, by the way, that when people say money is the root of all evil, they're really talking about 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. And I'm just going to take a part of it. This is the important part that makes the point. By the way, we also had a debate about which version. I'm not even going to get into that whole discussion in the pre-show planning. But Pharisee here with his snobby translation versus me with my training wheels. But here's the actual verse. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil. I'm going to repeat that. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil.
Yep.
So I think that goes back to the question we keep asking. And I think I love it when in a very Seinfeld-esque way things come full circle. What is your why? I mean, what is actually driving your intent? What wakes you up in the morning? What does your heart say? There's a reason we say what's your why. And because don't love the money. Understand that it's a tool. Understand what its purpose is. And I think you'll be on a much safer territory and unstable ground.
So, once we kind of get past understanding, okay, well, there's nothing inherently wrong with being wealthy. There's nothing inherently wrong with having resources. We have to think about other lies that society tells us about folks who have achieved some level of wealth or who have achieved some level of success. And this one is one that I think is just really, really frustrating too.
Well, yeah, I fell prey to this. I tell the story all the time is that I grew up thinking wealthy people, the only way they could have got there was really at the expense of someone else. It had to have been a zero-sum game. For this person to be successful, they had to have trashed or taken advantage of somebody here. That's not the way once you actually start studying wealth, understanding what creates wealth, it doesn't necessarily work that way.
That's right.
So let's actually show them what is the perception versus the reality.
Yeah, so if we ask the question, do millionaires inherit their wealth? 74% of millennials believe that most millionaires inherited their wealth. So if they were wealthy, it came from mom and dad.
Well, I want to add, because I know you've gone ahead and pulled the baby boomers. I think, because I'll just make a broad statement. Guys, we speak curses upon ourselves and we have limiting beliefs when somebody tells you this. And be careful who you let into your brain, because this is what drives me crazy. We both come from very humble beginnings. Yep. And I think that, I had so many people in my background who were telling you those son of a guns taking advantage of people. It's just in our society right now that when we see 74% of millennials, this is believe that millionaires inherited. 52% of baby boomers believe it. That's still the majority of the public thinks that the only way you become wealthy is to get lucky. And you know what? If you want more proof of this, look at who buys lottery tickets. Because I think a lot of people who are in lower income situations, they think there's no way out and that they have to just wait for the fates to smile upon them by buying a lottery ticket. I hate that. Yep. I hate that. That's a limiting belief. If you start early enough, if you start often enough when you're young, you too can be successful. And it's that easy. Yeah,
and so we actually took this a step further and we did our Money Guy Wealth Survey. This is what we found the reality to be. Only 11% of the millionaires that we interviewed inherited over $100,000.
So that's actually a chunk of money.
It's a chunk. Yep. So if you inherit $100,000, that's a good start.
Essentially, the people that think that 74% of millionaires are inherited, the actual number is closer to 11% of 100,000. Now, we put another stat in here.
So 12% of millionaires inherited some money, but it wasn't over $100,000. So they inherited something, but it was less than $100,000.
I also think when you look at these stats, you have to be careful because a lot of these people, I think, were successful. Their parents might have passed away after they had reached success. Because realize you don't inherit typically until your parents pass away. Right. So a lot of these people might have already navigated to success, and then their parents passed away, and that's when they inherited the $25,000 from divvying up the estate. So it's interesting, but that leaves a pretty big chunk, Bo.
Yeah, the big chunk is 77% of the millionaires that we interviewed inherited nothing, did not receive any. They were all first generation. They built it themselves.
So I think that's interesting because what that ties into is if you think about, this is our own Money Guy Wealth study and survey. We do this every year, started last year, so it's our first inaugural. You see, I like how I did that, added a little depth to it, even though we've only done 1 year. But I did think it was interesting because this did add some depth to it, is that we have 77% of our clients didn't inherit anything. Well, at least we have some back testing this. If you look at 1996, the Millionaire Next Door, I display it proudly. The number was 80% are first generation affluent. If you go look at the next Millionaire Next Door by Chris Hogan, I've got that behind me too, from Ramsey Solutions. His number is 86% are first generation.
That was Sarah Fallows. The next Millionaire Next Door.
The Millionaire Next Door in 2016. That was Sarah. And then you got Chris Hogan with Everyday Millionaires. His was 79% nothing, 84% less than $100,000.
Yep.
Guys, that ties in nicely. This is not a fluke. This is not because we have different types of clients, as you heard from Millionaire Next Door, from the next Millionaire Next Door, as well as Everyday Millionaires. It all ties directly into our content and our research that about 80% of millionaires are first generation. Now, look, there's a dark side to this, and this is something that you ought to use. 70% of second generation blows the money of the wealthy first generation 90% by the time you get to the grandkids. So this is why it's always an ever cleansing process and system to wealth creation. So don't let some limiting belief that the system's against you keep you from actually being that first generation that breaks seven figures.
Yeah, so if you're that young person listening and you say, man, I want to be a millionaire, great, do it. You can. Don't let that stop you. Now, if you're that older person who has reached some success and you have millionaire status, don't let your kids be part of that statistic that burns through it. Start teaching them how to steward that well so that it's not a vicious repeating cycle.
So once again, we have resources because I want you to know that don't let the limiting belief, go ahead and start wiring your brain to think you can do this and get excited about it. Go to moneyguy.com/resources and you're going to see we have a money multiplier. What's the actual official title on it?
How powerful are your dollars? Reby is going to have that baked into my bread. How powerful are your dollars is the name of it.
If you've ever wanted, because you hear us say $1 has the opportunity to turn into $88, you go, well, I'm 32. We actually have the number for you. I'm 46. Well, you can go look at our money multiplier worksheet, and it's going to help you know how powerful are your dollars. What do you need to do to build to have the level of resources that will just put you on that next level of financial success so your money works as hard as you do with your back, your brains, your eyes, and your hands. All of it can be taken care of with your army of dollar bills if you'll just let the money start doing the work.
Building wealth is surprisingly simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit easier, though, if you can take this and recognize who those outside influences are that are trying to steer you in one way or the other, and you can just be inoculated from that influence, and you can focus on doing what you're supposed to be doing the way you're supposed to be doing. And we're going to be your tour guides to help keep you all along that path to financial independence.
So guys, go subscribe, go out to YouTube. We need to get to 100,000 by year end. Also understand the abundance cycle. Yeah, that's right. We keep loading you up with tons of free advice. This was more of a behavioral lesson that we've given today, how to protect yourself. But we also do some really meaty, nerdy stuff too. Go out there and check out some of our 401k and other shows. That is the abundance cycle. You come learn, apply, grow. We know you're going to graduate to the level that you will need a financial advisor, and we hope that you'll come back to where it all started. Remember, if you want an accelerator for the process, go grab our free resource, the Financial Order of Operations at moneyguy.com/resources. And if you want to speed up the process with some nudging from us, some private Facebook group, some worksheets, some data gathering forms, you can go sign up for the premium version, which right now is at a discounted price until the month end. Go sign up, Financial Order of Operations. Thanks so much, guys. We have a great time creating content. We'll be back soon with even more new shows.